everybody, my name's Sarah Rowley. I am your Witte Museum STEM Education Manager, and welcome to another segment of Witte Where You Are. Today, we are going to dive into weather stations. So check out my weather station in the beautiful Witte Museum's backyard. Scientists who study weather are called meteorologists, and they use a lot of different tools to figure out what the current weather conditions are and what the conditions will be coming soon. So we're going to go and explore how these different tools work. I want to start by talking about thermometers. Thermometers are tools that measure temperature. And take a moment and think about that word, thermometer. Meter, if you hear ometer or meter, that means it's going to be measuring something. And therm, when you hear that in a word, refers to heat. So take a moment and think of all the different words you know that have therm in them. You can pause your video if you need to. Did you come up with any of these? I've got thermometer, a tool that measures weather. Thermostat, that might be something you have in your home to adjust the temperature. Endotherm and ectotherm, which are another way of saying hot and cold-blooded, which is referring to how animals regulate their body temperatures. Thermos, which is a brand name for something that's going to keep hot things hot and cold things cold. Scientists call that a doer. And geothermal, referring to heat from the earth. So therm just means heat, and there are a lot of different words related to that. Now, there are different types of thermometers, and they work in different ways. So let's start with a liquid-filled thermometer. A liquid-filled thermometer works using thermal expansion and contraction. So I want to show you what that is before we get into how that makes the thermometer work. I have with me today the one-of-a-kind Witte Museum ring on a stick. I know, very special. And the official one-of-a-kind Witte Museum sphere on a stick. Now, you'll notice when I put them together, the ring doesn't quite fit around the sphere. Now, I'm going to add some heat energy to that ring. One moment, goggles on. Let's see what happens. As the ring heats up, the itty bitty molecules, those are tiny particles that are too small for us to see, its itty bitty molecules are speeding up, they're spreading out, and our ring is getting just a teensy tiny bit bigger. And another way for saying bigger is expand. So we would say it is thermal expansion, getting bigger as it heats up. Let's see if that made any noticeable difference. It doesn't look any bigger, but whoa, that's so cool. It fits around the ring, the sphere. It got just a little bit bigger by heating up. Now, if I take that heat away by dipping this in water, well, then it cools down and the molecules slow down, they get closer together, and it got smaller. Another way of saying that is it contracted. So we would call that thermal contraction. Now, in your thermometer, the same thing is happening. By the way, this thermal expansion and contraction is true for every substance except water and bismuth. They work a little different way. So inside of our thermometer, we have a liquid. There's a little pool of it in the bottom, and then as that liquid heats up, it expands and it rises up the tube. And as it cools down, it contracts and it sinks down the tube. And so by looking at the level of the liquid, we can calibrate that to figure out what the current temperature is. Another type of thermometer uses something called a bimetal strip. So if you look at this thermometer, it's got a dial, and when we look at the back, you'll see an itty bitty teeny tiny bit of metal sticking out of it. Can you see that? That itty bitty teeny tiny bit of metal is actually two metals back to back stuck together. And when they heat up, they're going to behave a little differently because they'll expand at different rates. Let me show you an example of a bimetal strip. Goggle moment. We're going to get Commander Flamey going. There we go. So as the metal heats up, one metal expands more than the other. So our bimetal strip changes shape. And it doesn't matter which side I point that torch at because it's all about which metal is expanding more. So you can see it's starting to curve and change shape as it heats up. When I take the heat away, it's going to go back to the shape it was before because it cooled down and those metals contracted. So in your bimetal strip thermometer, what you'll notice, I'm going to move the strip with my hand, is as that strip changes shape, that will move the needle on the dial. So that's how your thermometer works. Another tool that scientists use to keep track of what's going on with the weather is a weathervane. You've probably seen weathervanes before, some really cool decorative ones on top of barns or houses. Maybe they might be shaped like a rooster, is a really classic design people will use. A weathervane will show you the wind's direction. It has two parts. It has a part that doesn't turn. That's this part here. We make sure it's pointing to the north so that we know where north is. And this part shows us the direction of the different compass points. This piece here will rotate. It's got a big old sail on it, and the wind pushes it to face whatever direction the wind is blowing. So then we can look at our compass points and figure out which direction the wind is going. Now, what's interesting here is that if the wind changes direction, that might indicate that there's going to be a change in the weather. So you can use that to predict what's coming next. Also with the wind, we want to measure how fast it's going. And for that, we're going to use a tool called an Manometer. An Manometer is going to measure wind speed. This one is a cup anemometer. It has these itty bitty cups and it will turn as the wind blows on it. If the wind is going slowly, it will turn slowly. If the wind's moving quickly, it'll spin a lot faster. And you'll notice one of them's a different color than the rest. We count how many times that turns in a given length of time to figure out how fast the wind is going. Another type of anemometer will have a dial on it. This one has an itty bitty teeny tiny piece of metal in it, and that tiny piece of metal moves when the wind pushes on it, and that will turn the needle on the dial. What's helpful about this one is it also has a compass, so we can also figure out the wind's direction in case we don't have a weather vane handy. Our next tool that I want to talk about for measuring the weather is going to be a rain gauge. A rain gauge simply has a ruler on it, and it will collect rain as the rain falls. And so we can measure how much rain has fallen. Now that's useful to know because in different conditions, we're going to be able to predict how much rain we might get when we track it day after day after day. Another reason this is useful is we can keep track of, have we had a lot of rain or just a little recently? Because we want to know how much water is going down into our aquifer. That's the water we drink. We want to keep track of how much is going in and out. So one tool that helps us do that is a rain gauge, so that we can measure rainfall. So that concludes this segment of Witte Where You Are. What I highly recommend is that you check out our website, because we are going to post instructions for how you can make your very own backyard weather station. And then you can track the weather that's happening every day and see if you notice any patterns. We would love to hear about the science you're doing in your backyard. Please stay tuned for more Witte Where You Are videos, and thank you all for watching.